Today's video, I'm going to do a quick review on the upcoming Season 3 characters, which are going to be Clover Academy Charlotte, Fuegoleon, and also Jack. Now, I know a lot of other content creators already posted videos on this, and they say, Charlotte's the best character out of the bunch. Fuegoleon is still good, but probably more for the burn meta later on in the future. And Jack is just a really bad character that you can skip. And if you want to skip this banner altogether, you can do so because Charlotte's really the only one you want from Gateway. So that's what everyone else is saying. Um, I have different views, to be honest, which you may find it to be controversial because my conclusion is actually yes, Charlotte is really good, but she has really high skill cap to use, so she can actually be extremely difficult to use in real life if you don't have any dupes. For Goldia, some people are also saying Charlotte is the best counter to Season 2 Noelle. For Goldia is much better counter. So if you literally just want to destroy the barrier meta in PvP, you want to pick for Golden rather than Charlotte. And Jack, this is probably the most controversial of them all. I actually think, honestly, for free to plays, you need Jack more than the other two characters because he is a green attacker. And in this game, there are not many green attackers. And if we actually talk about free to plays, tend to summon for limited character rather than the characters who will be in general pool that you can normally get by chance. If you actually take a look at limited character, which I'll show you later on, he's the only green attacker. Like it's just as simple as that. So honestly, yes, you can say in terms of actual how good the characters are, Jack is probably the worst in terms of his full kit. But from a free-to-play perspective, he is probably filling a gap that you are realistically gonna find really hard to fill. And in fact, he is probably gonna bring more incremental value to you than others. Because Charlotte, there are other buffers in the game who can do just as well. For Golden, there are loads of attackers and red attackers in particular. So I would say you are probably not lacking those two roles. If just to break the barrier, you have like Blue Yami, Red Asta as well. Jack is actually filling a role which for a lot of free to players may not actually have. But that's kind of why I know this is totally different to what other content creators are saying, but I really want to highlight this fact. And that's kind of the reason of my video. I want to talk about all of this character from a different perspective to what other people may be talking, so that when it comes down to you guys making the choice, you have all of the information out there in the world for you to make the right decisions for your account. Okay, so let's start off with Charlotte first. So Charlotte does a lot of stuff. She offers counterattack. She does total defense, which is great because that's a guaranteed block. And if you use that with a green talent, which gives debuff immunity whenever an attack is blocked, that's very strong in PvP. She also do an increase all attack for 2 turns, which is also very nice. And she also have this thing, which is basically saying that if your whole team is blue, you inflict silence. So this is different to the total silence from Blue Yami. This one only prevents skill 2, but the enemy can still use special skill, etc. And then you have this passive, which gains 1 skill point, 1 attack, and enhance 5. This actually then also means your counter attack is going to be for 2 turns when you use a special skill, I believe. So loads of different things she can do. But one thing I want to really flag to your attention is that unless you enhance 5 her, otherwise a lot of the stuff she do is only for 1 turn, right? So normal attack, counter attack for 1 turn, special skill attack, counter attack for 1 turn. This one total defense for only 1 turn. Increase attack is for 2 turn, but I'll talk about that separately. So you can say everything else is only for 1 turn. And the way this game works is that if your characters make a move, then at the end of that, that turn's count is gone. So if you actually want to trigger counterattack and also total defense, etc., what you are looking for is the enemy hitting you before you make a move, i.e., the enemy need to outspeed you. And the way, if you actually look at the character stats, I've sorted by speed, what you can see is most of the time, buffers move the faster, they have the faster speed, then followed up normally by debuffers. You can see like Charlotte, etc. Let me change this to SSR. And then you have things like Charlotte, Noelle, I mean the future one, but you can see like debuffers generally come next, and then some attackers. So you get juniors. Some of the slower debuffers have the same speed as the faster buffers, but that's generally how it goes. So now if you actually put this in practice, if I want my characters to counter attack. Normally, you want your DPS to counter attack, right? There's no point for your really slow tanks or healers to counter that because they have really low attack stats, etc. So normally you want your DPS to counter attack. But the only way your DPS can counter attack is if the enemy actually attack you first. And normally what that basically means is the enemy team need to have buffers who can actually attack but that I mean they actually need to physically attack you because if you look at Ghost or Charlotte, you can see two of their skills are actually not doing damage; they're just buffing up themselves, so they wouldn't trigger any counterattack or total defense, etc. So yeah, so basically you are kind of betting on the enemy to have buffers who actually do attack. So maybe like Sally's skill, special skill rather than skill two, that kind of thing, or you are expecting them to have a debuffer to actually hit you so that you can then counterattack back. Uh, Especially for the case of Judas, who's normally on the faster end of the attackers, you pretty much if you actually look at Judas, right? I'm just doing SR right now, but if you look at the ones who can physically attack with a lot of the time, you have Charlotte, you have maybe Asta if that Asta want to go after your Judas, and that's about it. Sadly, normally the time they do skill two. Obviously, if you do play a mono blue team, so you can silence them, then fine, Sally as well. But honestly, if you want your Judas to actually counter attack back, you are kind of expecting the enemy to actually have Charlotte or having Red Asta or having a Sally buffing. But those are the only three scenarios you can actually pull off Judas counterattacking. And that's about it. And I'm not even taking into consideration that a lot of people actually run Judas with speed gear, in which case you probably want to actually take them off because if you do have speed gear, actually you'll be faster than Charlotte as well. So actually the way you need to play your blue Charlotte on your team requires a lot of careful consideration of both how fast your characters are and also how fast the opponent characters are. And that's kind of why I say, if you do not max enhance her in order to get that 2-turn counter attack, and you have to go away with just 1 turn, you have to be very, very careful about the way you actually position your team with the various different gears and also what the enemy turn order may be so that you can actually realistically pull off the counterattack. And I'm just using June as an example because most people have it. I'm going to use the second example as Season 2 Noel, which is another very meta character. If you look at Season 2 Noel, right, it's almost the same thing. You basically have an added the only two other meta character I can see, which is kind of faster than Noel, would be Judas and Lotus, right? Lotus would slow you down if they actually play, so that's like a slightly different consideration altogether. And if you actually have Judas, don't expect Season 2 Noel to counter against Judas because if Judas actually use special skill, he will be stunning you. And if you're stunned, you can't counter attack anyway if he doesn't kill you, that is. So he will either be killing you off or he will be stunning you. So your Season 2 Noel would not be able to counterattack anyone. So basically, yeah, like I said, if you actually have a DPS, which is either Judas or Season 2 Noel, in order to actually pull off those counterattacks, it's actually going to be quite difficult. And that's kind of why I do feel the skill cap for Charlotte is really, really high if you're able to play well. But for a casual player without lots of testing of the teams and also trying out different combinations, she can be difficult to use in practice. So that's what I'm going to say, which is what a lot of people fail to mention out there. The other thing is the only one that is valid for 2-turn is increase attack or attack, which is great, and this is an AoE, right? The thing with this is that if I actually go into just the buffers, so what Charlotte's able to offer is 40% increase attack for 2 turns. I'm just talking about the base level, by the way. But this is a 40% increase all attack for 2 turns. If I look at William is able to do just attack for 84% for only one character, though. Same thing for Sally. Sally is for just magic attack and only for 84. War, I also have Ghost, which can actually do all attack, and this one's actually higher for 50%, and also give other buff as well. So what does that mean? That basically means if you are actually only having one DPS on your team, Ghost, Sally, and William are all better. Um, Ghost is clearly better. Like this value just higher, like 50% is higher than 40%. So that's obvious. For William and Sally, they're also better because the way people build characters, they normally only focus on either physical attack or magical attack, and that 84% increase on the one which you're highest is going to be better than a flat 40 across both, right? So it also makes sense that way because the extra 40%, the incremental difference between 84 versus 40 in the one which you are focusing on is going to be much higher than the additional 40 on one stat you're not focusing on. So that's kind of why William and also Sally are better than Charlotte, than the blue Charlotte, if you only have one attacker. So this basically means that if you actually want to use blue Charlotte, the incremental value she's gonna give is only one. One, she is playing in a team with multiple attackers, or two, she is playing in a team where the enemy have certain debuffers who are then able to trigger off your DPS counterattack. So those are the two scenarios for your Charlotte to actually shine. And if that is not going to be the case, and you're just a casual player who doesn't really care too much about kind of fine tuning your teams, etc., then I have to say, even though Charlotte is very good as a character, she is probably not gonna give you much additional value, and that's kind of why I actually think Fuegoleon and Jack may actually be better choices in those cases. Now, before moving on to Fuegoleon, I'm going to talk about lastly this unique passive, which is when all allies belong to the technique type, you are going to inflict silence, and a lot of people say this is basically why Charlotte is such a good counter to Season 2 Noelle. I completely disagree on that because for two reasons. One, for you to do this against that Season 2 Noelle, what this basically means you have a whole team which is blue. Okay. Now there are normally two types of season two Noel comps. One season two Noel comp is the one that go for one hit KO with just season two Noel. Or two is a season two Noel normally paired. Actually, no, there's three scenarios. One is a season two Noel which is going for one hit KO. One with like photo speed art and then juniors etc. Another one is season two Noel by herself. Those are normally the weakest one. And then the third type is normally season two Noel plus radius and go for that double barrier play. All right. If we're going in the first scenario where that season two Noel is going for one hit KO, she is not gonna use her skill two, which is a barrier animal. Anyway, she's just gonna kill you straight off. So this means absolutely nothing. For the second type, where season two Noel is by herself, yes, you're preventing that barrier. However, the condition for that is you have a whole team of blue characters. Like honestly, a season two Noel is not going to do that much against a whole team of blue characters anyway. So you're kind of winning that matchup purely because your whole team is blue, rather than the fact that you're inflicting silence and prevent barrier on turn one. So I don't feel like this add much value there either. And then in the last scenario, when you have season 2 Noel and also radius at the same time, yes, you are preventing that barrier from season 2 Noel in the first turn, but radius will just put up the barrier. And with radius barrier on, and normally radius is actually faster than Noel anyway, so radius will put out the barrier. You still won't be able to kill them off in the first turn, and then in the second turn, that Noel will just put up her barrier on. So this is actually making no difference. And if you're saying that you are able to kill off the enemy, even though Radius have barrier on, were you able to kill off the team before Radius put up barrier? Then if you can do that one hit KO, then this makes no difference either, because you'll be killing them off before Noel even makes a turn. So in all honesty, right, if you have to think about the three scenario where you have season two Noel, this is not going to make any difference at all. So that's kind of why I'm not saying this is a bad skill. This is actually more used to suppress buffers because most buffers use skill 2 first to buff up their team, especially for example if you're up against Sally. By using this, you prevent Sally from using skill 2 and then she has to use skill 3, which then actually hit you and then you can counterattack there. So that's kind of what this skill is more for. It's for suppressing buffers. It's not for countering season 2 Noel. So that's one thing I really want to get clear this up. And if you do actually want to just destroy Season 2 Noel, the barrier meta completely, Fuegoleon is really what you want because this is the one that you can do AoE barrier removal. Now, there are already ways to remove barrier with the likes of Blue Yami or Red Asta, and they all work, but those are normally for when you're actually attacking. So you know exactly when the enemy is putting up the barrier, and also you can choose who to actually remove the barrier from. So those are more for attacking. However, if you actually talk about from defensive PvP point of view, I actually think Fuegoleon is a really good choice, probably better than Charlotte, because what you can do is you can actually do AoE dispel barrier. So this way you don't have that kind of RNG chance anymore, and you can guarantee you win that matchup against the Radius and also Noel double meta team, double barrier team. And also this is much better than whatever Charlotte's able to do, because what Charlotte's do is just a stall tactic. You delay barrier by 1 turn, and sometimes it's actually more annoying because before you have two barrier which is only valid for 2 turns at the same time. So after those 2 turns are gone, if you actually delay the Noel barrier on top of the radius barrier, which will be active on turn 1, the enemy now actually essentially gets 3 turns where they have a barrier on. So this is not actually doing anything for you, and also the enemy actually, get a free hit out of that as well, essentially. Whereas what Fuegoleon is able to do is, yes, you can waste your time to put up a barrier, but I'll just dispel it afterwards anyway. So not only you are not giving them that one extra turn barrier, you are actually effectively making them waste a turn by putting up that barrier in the first place. So that's kind of why Fuegoleon is so much better from my point of view. If you actually want to do like concentrate on PvP defense, like a lot of people saying Charlotte's really good for PvP defense. In all honesty, in the meta right now, I actually think Fuegoleon is better as a PvP defense because of how you can just absolutely destroy Radius and also Noel meta completely. And if you're saying people, the meta would change because there will be less Noel because of the mono blue from Charlotte, etc., then fine. But Radius will still be there, and Fuegoleon can still do insane amount of attack against it. But that's kind of why I do feel like if you're going for PvP defense point of view, I just think Fuegoleon offer more than Charlotte. Unless you have like a max dupe Charlotte where you know how to kind of tweak around your team to really actually utilize counter attack and total defense. But that does require skill, right? So that's kind of why for casual player, I think Fuegoleon is much more better option for you guys in PvP. Then lastly, Jack. So the thing with Jack is I already mentioned earlier on. If you actually look at all the green attacker, right? This is all the green. Oh, okay. So they have season 8 now. But if you look at all of this, for most free to plays, normally what's going to happen is that you normally want to focus your resources on limited banners rather than permanent banners, the regular pools, etc. Because you can potentially just pull them by chance. Whereas limited banners, you normally only have like limited chances, right? That's why it's called limited. And if you actually play it that way, what you then realize is that you don't have many green attacker options. Yeah, all of the only limited ones, so assuming you skip on all of the general pool permanent banners, the only limited ones you have is Season 4 Jack, Season 3 Vanessa, and Season 8 Yami. Now, this Season 3 Vanessa, because they changed the way they are playing, they are doing the banners, I don't actually know when this will be coming out. So that is one thing. And then the other thing is that if you actually look at her skills, it's a lot of AoE skills. Uh, etc. And the single target doesn't actually. Oh, actually, this one does actually do a lot. But yeah, normally the general consensus on this Vanessa is that she's not the greatest because she's beware. She basically get increased damage when you have damage res. So it kind of require you to go for damage res build, which is only done by substat. So that's a bit difficult for you to get. And then the other thing is her strongest attacks AoE. So even though she's an attacker from like offensive capability wise, Vanessa is probably not the highest out there in comparison to the likes of Raya or Jack, etc. You do have this season Ayami, which I don't even know what his skills are. I haven't had a chance to take a look here, but that's far in the future. So from that point of view, if you do want a green DPS, Jack is like the only one you can realistically get in short term because even though they're accelerating banners, this is still 4 banners apart, right? So 4 banners apart, 20 days for each banner, or maybe 30 days now. I don't know how they want to do it. We're talking about at least another 3 or 4 months before you get another green DPS, which are limited. So if you actually only do limited summons, Green Jack is the best choice for green DPS that you can guarantee right now. And that to me is a lot of incremental value because there are some content which are actually very difficult if you do not have the right color typing. And normally those are the boss content. So that's kind of why I also think like even though Vanessa is a green attacker, because her special skill is an AoE, even though she does seem to have a really good single target skill too. I just don't think her damage output is going to be enough from attacking boss point of view. Whereas if you actually look at Jack, what Jack is able to do, if you have the skill page, that is, you're able to do 500% increased damage, which is absolutely crazy. And even without the skill page, let's say you gateway key him, what you can do is you can stack up 3 times. It does require you to do single target skill 2 3 times, which is 6 turns. But if you have the likes of Lotus and also Finro to debuff your enemy or buff up your own speed, that's still relatively easy for you to get. And also whenever he's getting hit, he also get increased stamina. So I still argue this is fairly easy to build up to at least 2 stack or maybe 3 stack. And if that's the case, you basically get 50% single target plus I'm gonna say 3, so 3 times 80, 240, so that's 290 percent normal single target attack, which if you compare to Raya normally only get 150 plus 70, so that's 220. Then depending on how many buff you get, you can get more. So actually, Jack with 3 stacks is gonna be better than Raya, even if Raya have 4 buffs. So that's kind of why I do see a lot of value in the season 3 Jack when it comes to actually nuking boss, which I do feel is needed for everyone to have that green DPS coverage. Now, some of the content people are able to clear right now with, for example, Julius, etc., and can just brute force it. But I can also totally imagine in the future they will have a much more harder content where you really need that color advantage for you to actually clear it. I'm going to give an example, which is Hall of Illusion stage 85. I know you can clear it with Julius, but it's so much easier to clear if you have a green DPS like Raya or maybe like this Clover Academy Jack. So that's kind of why I also want to bring this to your attention, which is that if you're actually free to play, and this is more for the free to play section anyway, because if you're well, you'll just summon everything. But if you're actually free to play, the incremental value from Jack is actually going to be a lot higher than Charlotte. So even though I know loads of YouTubers are saying Charlotte character as a whole is better than Jack, which I agree. If you're talking about completely build up Charlotte versus completely build up Jack, I agree Charlotte's better than Jack. But if you look at the incremental value, this character can actually bring to your existing team, to your existing box. I would argue for vast majority of people, Jack is probably better. Obviously, if you do have Raya or a different green DPS, then that's a different matter. But otherwise, definitely do not rule out Jack because he can actually totally make the difference for you in some of those more limited events, rather than what Charlotte is able to offer, which you can actually replace with a different character.